Hello friends, Paudie here coming to you loud and proud from the Leprechaun Museum. Over the years, you've probably heard me tell many stories about the famous High King of Ireland, Brian Boru, the hero of the Battle of Clontarf in 1014, who famously drove the Vikings out of Ireland. You probably heard me tell many dark stories about Brian, though, such as Brian's encounter with the Banshee before the Battle of Clontarf, or the famous story of Brian's torture weapon, the clam. There is a light-hearted story about Brian Brew, though, that I want to share with you today. And it involves not only Brian Brew, but the real hero of the story, his wife, Queenie. Now, Queenie was a big woman. I mean, she was massive. But that was no problem for Brian or for anyone in the kingdom, because in those days, big was beautiful, and the bigger the better. The two big lovers are laying in their bed after a feed of pints the night before. They're laying down together, and Queenie turns to her beloved husband Brian, saying, "Oh, it was a good night last night, wasn't it, Brian? And I know exactly what we need. I'm going to do us a big fry up." So she climbs out of the bed, she goes downstairs to the kitchen, gets her skillet pot, and starts frying the eggs. Brian is having a little bit of a doze, feeling all snuggly and warm and cozy in his bed, and he's just about to stumble downstairs to the kitchen when what should happen but his toes start talking to him, namely his two big toes. And they say, well, the right toe starts, it says, "Brian, it's awfully tough being one of your toes. You have very, very smelly socks, and you only take a bath once a year. On top of that, you have 10 toes. I mean, who needs 10 toes? You're only being greedy having so many toes. We'd like to have a life of our own, away from your smelly socks." Brian thought to himself, and he suppose, well, it is a bit greedy to have as many as 10 toes. So he agreed. "Okay, toes, you can leave and have a life of your own, and let my blessing go with you." He pulled off the right toe first and then the left toe. Both toes then grew their own tiny little arms and their tiny little feet. They began to dance around the bedroom, and then they ran down the turret stairs, ran past Queenie in the kitchen, and she didn't even see them leave. Well, Brian is feeling awfully hungry now, and Queenie shouts up at him, "Oh, Brian, you owl Amadon, come down to the kitchen. You know you hate it when your eggs get a skin on them. Oh, if you want the best of the fry up, Brian, you better come down now." Brian stands up, but of course he has no big toes, so he immediately falls flat in his face. He finds that he has no balance at all. Now, Brian is a big man, and when he falls down, sure, Queenie can hear it downstairs, and she comes running. She's awfully frightened that something terrible has happened. Brian explains to Queenie that he gave his toes their freedom and that they have run off together. "Oh, Brian, you big owl ape. Sure, you're a warrior, the best warrior in Ireland, and everyone knows that warriors need their big toes for balance. What'll we do at all? I'll have to go after the toes." So she lifts up her skirts and she runs out of the rocket castle and all the way down the road. She's running as best as she can, and there, suddenly, in the middle of the road, she sees the two toes having a scrap. They have made swords out of blades of grass, and they're having at it. "No, I'm the right toe. No, I'm the right toe," said the other toe. "No, it's me. I'm the right toe. No, 'tis me. I'm the right toe." And they go on like this forever. Queenie gets down on the ground, and she looks down at the two toes, and she says to them, "What's going on at all?" "Well, Queenie, we're having a debate. We both think we're the right toe, and neither of us can figure out how to solve it. Well, I know exactly who'd have that information, said Queenie. Why don't you go back to Brian? Sure, he's the grandest lad in the whole of Ireland. You're dead right, Queenie, said the toes. Brian is very, very sound. Didn't he give us our freedom? So the toes went back to the castle, in across the drawbridge, back up the turret stairs, climbing and falling all over the place because they were only small. They got back to Brian and he looks down at them and they said, Brian, we can't figure out who is the right toe. Only you will be able to tell us which is which. Oh, well, to figure that out, said Brian, I'll have to put the toes back on. So he first put on the right toe. He then put on the left big toe and wiggled them a little bit. And he said, well, I'm fairly certain that you're the right big toe and you're the left big toe. Oh, that's grand. I'm glad you solved that for us now, said the toes. We'll just be off now again. We'll go on our adventure. Oh, no, says Brian. Sure, you couldn't be leaving. I need you to fight. I'm a warrior and I need to protect Ireland. If you leave, the whole country will fall apart. You don't realize this, Toes, but you are actually very, very important. We didn't realize we were such important people, said the Toes. Oh, we'll have to hang about. But Brian, your socks, they're still so very, very smelly. Oh, we don't want to spend a whole year inside of your smelly socks, Brian. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do, said Brian Boru, High King of Ireland. I promise you that from this day forth, I will have a bath at least twice a year. Now, I hope you enjoyed that story of Brian Boru's very important toes. And I'm very, very delighted to speak to you all on Facebook and to, for a change, bring you a more light-hearted side of our most famous king. And who knows, maybe there are some O'Briens out there, descendants of Brian Boru. Look down at your toes and be very careful that one day they don't run away.